Yesterday we were discussing the two kinds of things, namely Chido Vinibanda, the 5 mental bondages, and Chido Kila, 5 obstructions, mental obstructions, since these can happen among people, especially meditators. Then, if one is overwhelmed by these bondages and obstructions, then one will not be free from mental bondages and not free from the bondage of kilesas, and one will not be able to stay calm. Then, because of these obstructions, they act like stumbling block. The mind will become very coarse and rough. So, of course, these can be overcome by means of reflective knowledge, the power of reflection, known as Paticcasamuppada Bala. The best way is to succeed. The best way of success is through the practice of Satipatthana. Satipatthana is the practice of choice to be able to overcome them successfully. That's why the Buddha has recommended these the Satipatthana practice to overcome both Chido Kila and Chido Vinibanda, so that they will become weakened, or they may fade away or disappear. So today we shall continue to discuss on this subject, how by noting we can overcome these two things. These four mindfulness, for Satipatthana, are Kaya-anupassana Satipatthana, mindfulness of the body; Vedana-anupassana Satipatthana, mindfulness of sensations of feelings; Citta-anupassana Satipatthana, mindfulness of the mind; and Dhamma-anupassana Satipatthana, mindfulness of general activities. As for the sati, it's only one thing. It's only one sati, one kind of sati. However, because there are 4 kinds of objects of attention, this sati becomes of 4 kinds, depending on the objects. First of all, we have this kaya, body as object of attention, noting whatever arises in the body; and vedana, secondly, as object of attention; and thoughts and mental objects as object of attention; and lastly, the seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and so on as general objects of attention. So let us begin first with the object of body as the object of attention. As the saying goes, kaya nupasi viharati. One should be mindful of the body as the body and dwell in this way, or one should dwell being mindful of the body as the body. Kaya, regarding the physical object or bodily object; kaya nupasi, note as the body; and viharati, dwell in all 4 postures. So one should dwell in 4 postures, noting the body as the body. Such is the meaning of this expression, kaya nupasi viharati. That means one should note the body as the body, not as vedana, citta, or dhamma. That means one should note as it is, or as it exists, or as it happens, as it occurs. One should start with this body meditation, or bodily meditation, or noting the body as the body. Out of this mind and body, rupa nama, the body is more obvious than the mind. Excuse me. Hence, we start with the body and mindfulness of the body. And as sentient beings belonging to the karma sphere, the body is more obvious. As for the devas and brahmas, for devas, maybe vedana anupassana, the mindfulness of sensations may be obvious And for Brahmas, Chaitanya-nupassana, mindfulness of the mind, is more obvious for the five material beings. As for the human plane, the body or rupa is more obvious than the nama or the mind. Hence, we begin with the body. In the text is given as Yata Nupakata Vipassana Pa Binivesa. Yata Pagatam Vipassana Binivesa. That means one should start with the obvious object. Yata Pagatam should an obvious object. Vipassana and with mindfulness and Binivesa. One should begin with the obvious object, not dim or unclear objects, but clear, obvious objects. We should start with that. Hence, this since the nama is not so obvious as the rupa or materiality, we start with the materiality, the body. And we have these four main elements, Mahabhuta and Upada Rupas, dependent materialities, and out of them this Mahabhuta is very obvious. So, and out of Mahabhuta also we choose the wind element. There are four elements, four main elements. Out of these four elements we choose the wind element, which is a manifestation of stiffness, tension and movement, which is more obvious than the three remaining essential elements. Excuse me. Now, in the rising and the falling, these sensations such as stiffness, tension and movement are very obvious. And we start with this wind element. In all the four postures, they are obvious. They can manifest in all these four postures. For instance, when you are standing or sitting, this stiffness, tension, movement, which are the manifestations of wind element, are quite obvious. And when you are walking, during walking meditation, you are lifting and moving and placing your foot, these are also the manifestations of wind element. They are quite obvious. When you are lying down also, your body is stiff. That is also a manifestation of wind element, and which is quite obvious, even to the extent of closing and opening your eyes, which are also the manifestation of wind elements. So when one is practicing Vipassana, one should start with the obvious object as is given in that expression. And out of these four essential elements, the wind element is most obvious, or more obvious than the remaining three. That's why we start with the manifestation of these wind elements, Vayo Dhatu. And we say this aggregate group of materialities, and we start with the most obvious material group or aggregate, as is given as Anupasana. We should note it repeatedly, activate mindfulness repeatedly and correctly. And correctly means noting the body as body, not as feeling, sensation or mind or seeing, hearing, general objects, but one should note the body as body. Such is how one notes correctly. And if in the case of Vedana, Vipassana, if you note Vedana as Vedana, then you are noting correctly. And if you note Vedana as Chaita, then it will be correct. That's why we start with the obvious object of the body, noting it correctly and repeatedly. There's a bit about something about Mahabhuta, the four essential main elements. We have this sometimes hardness, softness, harshness. All these things are the manifestation of the element of the earth, Paṭavī Dhātu, which happens in the body, like when you feel the bones or teeth, or without feeling, you may imagine it. You will find it hard. This is the manifestation of Paṭavī Dhātu, the earth element. Sometimes there's softness in the skin. That also is another manifestation of Paṭavī Dhātu, earth element. And also it serves as a location for other elements. And when it comes in contact with a rough thing, it tends to become heavy. When it comes in contact with soft thing, it tends to become light. Such are also the manifestation of the Paṭavī Dhātu. For example, you are standing or sitting on a stone. Then you feel hardness and heaviness. And when you are sitting on a sofa, like you are sitting on a cushion, you feel comfortable. That is softness. You feel softness. Softness leads to lightness. So that also is manifestation of this element. So in the body are the bones, teeth, and all these things. There are also heaviness and pressure, and also softness and lightness. All these are the manifestation of Paṭavī Dhātu, the element of earth. Then comes the Āpo Dhātu, the element of water, which is manifested as cohesion, liquidity, solidity, and multiplication. Let's say these are the manifestations of Āpo Dhātu, the element of water or liquidity. In the body are the exudations such as tears and saliva, and all these things are liquid, and they are the manifestation of this Āpo Dhātu, the element of water. It's quite obvious. At other times you will feel the temperature, heat, cold, warmth, lightness. These are the manifestation of the element of temperature, Tejo Dhātu. And then these sensations such as stiffness, tension, movement, pushing and pulling, which are the manifestations of Vayo Dhātu, the element of wind, or wind element. Such are the four basic essential elements, and they arise in your body as aggregate, not just one minute tiny piece, but it is an aggregate, agglomeration of a group of these tiny materials. Hence we call kaya, or material aggregate. They are the combinations. When it comes to softness, hardness, it's not one little teeny softness or hardness, but many combination of many minute hard things or soft things. And when it comes to liquidity, cohesion, solidity, it's also not just one thing, but a combination of many small, tiny little things. That's why we call aggregate, material aggregate. The same thing goes with heat, cold, not just one little small, tiny heat, but it is a combination of many pieces or moments, or I don't know, may call it the combination of heat elements, small, tiny elements, making into one whole heat or one whole cold. Or when it comes to stiffness, tension, it's not just one stiffness or one tension. It is a aggregate, a combination, a group of small feeling of stiffness or tension. That's why we call it material aggregate. Hence we call it kaya, or material aggregate, which is quite obvious. and we note this obvious bodily object correctly. We qualify it as qualify our mindfulness practice as rightly. That rightly we must note rightly, sustain our mindfulness rightly, activate our mindfulness rightly. That means note as it is, note as it exists or as it happens. What happens is the bodily manners, bodily objects, and these objects arise and are not stationary for even a single moment. They come and go, subject to impermanence, anicca. If one is not mindful, if one does not note with the practice of Satipatthana, one will think that it is permanent, and that one has not changed since one's youth, and one has been growing from youth to this elderly age without any change. You may think that it is just one same person from the time you are born up to this time. This is wrongful knowledge. If one is not mindful at the moment of arising, then one will hold the wrong view, not the right view. That's why you are asked to note, sustain your mindfulness, note it closely, firmly, so that you can see things rightly, as knowing the impermanence and impermanent. That is rightly noting and knowing. If whatever is impermanent cannot be satisfactory, if one is not mindful, then one will think this is satisfactory. Instead of taking things as dukkha, one will take them as sukha, pleasurable or satisfactory, which is the reverse of what actually happens, what actually exists. So noting and knowing as impermanent and unsatisfactory is noting rightly. Not noting rightly with the practice of Satipatthana, not by way of reflection. So, and in respect of these things which are subject to impermanence and unsatisfactoriness, nothing is self or soul. There's no living entity, atta, in it. Nor itself is atta, nor is atta in it. This is anatta, non-self, no living entity, not ungovernable, uncontrollable, unmanageable. Things arising at their will, not at your will. That will be known only when you note carefully. That's why you and then when you note them, they are subject to destruction. They are not pleasant. They are foul, unpleasant. They are asubha, not subha. They are unpleasant, not pleasant, not subha. And this can be only seen, asubha can be seen as asubha only when you note them correctly. That is, seeing it rightly, or noting things rightly. Asubha as asubha, foulness as foulness, or unpleasantness as unpleasantness. In this way, one becomes aware of the universal characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. That things arise and pass away, they come and go, and are not satisfactory. And what is impermanent and unsatisfactory cannot be self or soul. They are arising at their will, not at your will. That is, noting rightly. If you note it steadfastly, closely, not just what you may call casually. If you know it casually, then you will not know it rightly. Now, if you are noting it meticulously, you know it rightly. You see things rightly. So when you are noting also, you are noting the obvious object. The object must be such that it should manifest itself to your noting mind. Then only you'll be able to note it. You cannot note unobvious or unclear objects which are not clear. Hence, note the obvious object. In this case, the objects of the body. Note it rightly in order to understand the three universal characteristics. And out of these, the characteristics of this mind and body, such as the anicca, dukkha, anatta, and asubha, foulness or unpleasantness, it is easy to understand anicca, dukkha, impermanence and unsatisfactoriness, and also asubha, foulness or unpleasantness. But as for anatta of atta, that there is no such thing as atta, it is difficult to understand, especially for those who have been used to understanding atta or taking everything as atta. This view has ingrained in them all along their lifetimes. So they will only believe in atta, not in anatta, non-self. For instance, atta is given as janadikarana atta. That means atta is the one, atta is established or situated, found deep, penetrating knowledge. It's just mind or consciousness, such as seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, and things like that. And sometimes the mind or consciousness is taken as atta. And about atta, there are two kinds of atta: parama atta and jiva atta. Parama atta, supreme self or soul, and jiva atta, individual self or soul. And as for the first one, parama atta, supreme self or soul, it has the power of governing or controlling the whole universe. It controls the whole universe and knows of all things. It knows everything, and one and only one. And in it there is no substantial form, such as a form or sensation such as happiness or suffering or pleasure, or whether it's a round one or a flat one, or it's a tall one or a short one. Nothing substantial. One cannot describe the form of this parama atta. It is, in other words, it is a creator or Maha Brahma, the great Brahma. And that has been taken as parama atta. It is the possessor, or it is a knower or possessor of knowledge, in other words. And this is Maha Brahma, taken as parama atta. And as for the other junior self, junior atta, that is jiva atta, individual self or soul, it exists in every being. It is said, it is said that they believe it, that this jiva atta exists in every being, every animate thing. And it's the life of every animate thing. It's a living entity. So according to the size of the animal or the being, atta is large or small. depending on the size. Suppose in an elephant, the jiva atta is very big. The individual self also must be very big. And in a small ant, tiny ant, the jiva atta must be very tiny. So this is how they differ. And then in its own right, it is powerful. It has its own power. It is permanent. It's never impermanent. It's permanent. And never disappears, never dies, never perishes. When one dies, this is transferred from the previous life to the next life, a new body. Although the body may die, this never perishes. This is permanent, such as jiva atta, a living entity, living atta. And this is a kind of branch of this Supreme Self or Soul. It creates Supreme Self or Soul creates everything. And this is jiva atta as the created thing. And every activity, such as hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, is also the action of this jiva atta. Jiva atta is doing all these things. Whatever you see, whatever one sees, whatever one hears, and all that. So in this way, they hold this kind of view, such as atta. And the head office, headquarters, is Paramata, Supreme Self or Soul. And this jiva atta, individual self or soul, acts at the command of this Supreme Self or Soul, Paramata. Suppose Paramata, Supreme Self, say, oh, go and you see it, then it sees. You smell it, it smells. You die, then of course it won't die. The body will die. It will never perish. It moves from one body to another. So jiva atta is the created thing by the Creator. The cause is Paramata, and the effect is jiva atta. Paramata is the Creator. Only when the Buddha came into enlightenment, Buddha refuted the concept of atta. He says there are only mind and body. There's no atta. This is anatta. Itself is not self or soul, and there is no self or soul in it. It is not permanent or nor pleasurable, satisfactory. It is impermanent, unsatisfactory. So in this way, and they are conditioned things. They don't arise at their will. They arise according to causes. They are conditioned phenomena, such as anatta. The reason why one holds the view of atta is because one is not aware of the realities of mind and body. That's why one holds a view of atta. That's why one should note, activate mindfulness of every mind and body at the moment of arising. Then one will not accept this existence of atta. Now, existence of jiva atta, individual self or soul. Now, as for the acceptance or not of this Parama atta, the Supreme Self or Soul, when one becomes aware of the nature of mind and body, such as beginning with the discernment of Dhamma, mind and body, and the cause-effect linkage, conditionality, then one will come to, one will not accept this Parama atta. One is accepting because one is not aware of the nature, the characteristic of mind and body. Such as there is this mind, there is nothing besides mind and body, and there is nothing besides conditionality. And they are not causeless, they are due to cause. Otherwise one will accept this Paramatma as a creator. And also, even if one accepts the view of cause, one may take fictitious cause view. That is, what is not the cause as cause. Such as Paramatma as the cause of all beings. So this is taking what is not the cause as cause. If one is able to note and become aware of the nature of mind and body and their conditionality, and also not only the cause and effect linkage, but also the relevant cause giving rise to relevant effect, then one knows rightly, then one will no more hold the view of this existence of Supreme Self or Soul. If one is not mindful, one will always take the view of permanence and pleasure or satisfactoriness. Now, because one is mindful, one becomes aware that these objects are impermanent and unsatisfactory. So, because one is not aware correctly of things as they arise, one holds a view of permanence, satisfactoriness and self. Now one has been holding this kind of view. This view has ingrained in them for many years, if you count the time in this life, not mentioning the previous existences, not knowing the nature of the objects as mind and body and their causal mode and the universal characteristic. So holding the view of nature, Subha and Atta, permanence, satisfactoriness, pleasure and self. And one cannot overcome this view. And this view cannot be overcome or eradicated, uprooted by just thinking or intellectualization or reflection. Only when you activate mindfulness at the moment of rising, steadfastly, will you be able to overcome this false view. Suppose there is something you cannot see with your carnal eyes, ordinary eyes, you look through the glasses, and something you cannot see through the glasses, ordinary glasses, you use magnifying glasses or binoculars or spectroscope or whatever, microscope, or which is very much like the insight knowledge. That's just as an expression, Adapi Samajano Satima. Adapi, with the application of driving force. When you are noting to know the nature of the objects correctly as they are being subject to universal characteristics of impermanence and so on, you must apply a driving force, namely energy or virya, not just slackening, not just like attitude or casual noting, or in a very cool and unconcerned way. Note rising or falling, which are the objects of the body or other objects that may arise in the body at the moment of their arising, so that your noting mind, you drive your noting mind so that your noting mind grasps the object and is anchored into the object. So you just apply this driving force, energy, virya. Only when you possess virya or exert energy, driving force, luna virya in Pali, and you will be able to see things as they are. Noting in this way, applying or exerting your energy continuously, so that you are properly established in your practice. Then all these kilesas will dry up. That is given by this expression atapi, lola virya, the energy of the atapi, heat, the heat of energy. With the heat of energy, it will dry up kilesas. That means previously they are not dry. Kilesas are not dry. Kilesas are very active, moving about. They are emotions. Now these emotions will quiet down, calm down, or dry up even. So that is given by the atapi lunavariya, in essence, the energy. As much as you apply, exert that, kilesas will not be accepted. They will have no chance of arising in your stream of consciousness. They are said to be dried up with the heat of energy, atapi. Then, with the application of exertion of energy continuously, you are bound to sustain your mindfulness. That is given by the expression satima. Then your mindfulness happens steadfastly, sustains. Then you apply continuously, continue to apply, exert energy. As much as you do, you will be sustaining mindfulness. Not just applying energy at times, and sometimes your legs have no energy. Not intermittent energy, but continuous energy, sustained energy. And as much as you do that, then, now we're talking about this bodily objects arising in the body, kaya. Mindfulness will sustain. And as much as mindfulness sustains, the concentration will deepen on the objects noted. Your dirty mind will anchor, deeply sink into the object of attention. So that these kilesas which are moving about, which are very exciting kilesas, emotions, they will quiet down, and such is known as samatha, tranquilized. They are calmed down. As much as you apply some sati, samatha, deepening of concentration will happen. And as regards the objects of the body, you are knowing it rightly. You are knowing rightly in that when the sensation is hardness sensation, if you feel hard, then your dirty mind falls on this hardness, and you know it is hard. When the dirty mind is anchored into the softness, you will know it as soft. And when the mind is anchored into roughness, harshness, you will know it as roughness, harshness. And when the mind falls on this liquidity, cohesion, solidity, you will know them as such. And when it falls on heat, cold, warmth, any one of these sensations, you will know them as such. And this is how. And also when the manifestation of the wind element, such as the stiffness, tension, movement, relaxation, softness, all these things, whenever your mind is anchored into these sensations, you would know them as such. That is knowing rightly. That is, as much as you apply and exert energy, kilesas will not have a chance to arise in your stream of consciousness. They are said to be dried up, heated up with the heat of energy. Then the mindfulness will sustain and concentration deepen. As much as they do so, you will cultivate, cut through to insight knowledge. Then, because of this sustained mindfulness, you have this sustained insight knowledge. Hence this expression, atapi samajano satima. This happens because one is activating mindfulness with the method of Satipatthana, so that the mind is anchored into the object noted. That is, then one comes to know the sabhava lakkhana, the natural characteristics of the objects of the body noted, kaya. So when one knows like this, one cultivates knowledge, then one will come to know the characteristic of the objects noted, such as things arise and pass away, they are not satisfactory. The old is giving place to the new, and they cannot be satisfactory. And they are ungovernable, they arise on their own. There is no guarantee, no assurance from these objects, because you can never be certain, because they are unsatisfactory. They are not self or soul, they are not atta. They arise at their will, not at your will. They are unmanageable, uncontrollable. That is knowing rightly. Why do you know rightly like this? The reason is that you are exerting energy, applying energy, so as to sustain your mindfulness steadfastly and deepen your concentration. In this case, khanika samadhi, momentary concentration. That deepens. Then you cultivate knowledge. You cut through to insight knowledge. That is because of your mindfulness practice, the practice of mindfulness. That's why you come to know rightly. Not through reflection or thinking or imagination or intellectualization, by which you cannot understand the natural characteristics of our lakkhana. There's no way of becoming aware of these natural characteristics of our lakkhana. If you are not fully aware, if you are not fully aware correctly, then you will hold the view, you will cling to the view of permanence, satisfactoriness, pleasure, and self or soul. And what will happen? Then you will become greedy, you will become attached about agreeable objects. When it comes to agreeable objects, you would desire to possess these agreeable objects, that is lobha. And dosa, anger, ill will or dissatisfaction in respect of disagreeable, undesirable objects. Because of this view that you are clinging, these lobha, dosa, kilesas arise. Once you are able to activate mindfulness and become fully aware of the universal characteristics, because you know you abandon your do away with kilesas, all these views will be overcome. That is, these lobha, dosa, moha, kilesas will not have a chance to arise in your stream of consciousness, because you are noting steadfastly, activating mindfulness, sustaining mindfulness. That's why in respect of the objects noted, that is in this case the objects of the body, you are able to know things rightly, and kilesas will not have a chance to arise. As regards the objects noted, the kilesas, lobha, dosa, which will arise if you are not mindful, will not have a chance to arise because you are mindful. Not only these the kilesas in respect of not only the objects noted meticulously, obviously, but also other objects not noted, as regards in this case objects of the body, kaya. No kilesa, no lobha, dosa, kilesa will arise about the objects not noted. So no kilesas will arise in both these objects noted and not noted. So because you are sustaining your mindfulness, kilesas will not have a chance to arise, and they are said to be tranquilized, subdued. That is your benefit of the practice. Now, not through reflection or intellectualization will you be able to overcome these kilesas. And as much as you know, you will come. These kilesas will be subdued, and as much as you cultivate knowledge, you will be able to overcome these kilesas. For instance, if you are mindful for 1 minute, there will be 60 times of knowing, 60 moments of knowing the truth. Then, with the 60 times knowing the truth, the kilesas will be subdued 60 moments. And this happens because you practice mindfulness with the method of Satipatthana. And such is the benefit of the practice. As we were discussing these two things yesterday, the Citta Vinibbana and Citta Khila, these two things. The essence of Citta Vinibbana is greed, wanting, lobha. And as for Citta Khila, two things, doubt, skeptical doubt, and anger, krodha. These are the essences of these two things. Hence, in this Anapana Satipatthana, Anapana also is described. It is noting with the exertion of energy, with the heat of energy, one sustains mindfulness, and one comes to know the truth. Once one comes to know the truth, one will overcome doubt about the nature of mind and body, their conditionality and their universal characteristics. These doubts will be clear, these will be known through your own personal experience and testing on the touchstone of your personal experience. Then one knows rightly, there will be no kilesas arising in you. You will be clear of kilesas. Because you know the truth, there will be no doubt. And this is known through your personal experience, personal knowledge. So that doubts are cleared. So that no impurities will enter your stream of consciousness. You are free of impurities in this way. Free of impurities, free of doubts, free of lobha, free of anger. In this way, the most reliable method, the surest method of doing away with and overcoming this Citta Vinibbana, mental bondage, is through the practice of Satipatthana. That you come to understand through your own personal experience. And as for the description of Anapana, and the Anapana also becomes obvious. That is sustaining mindfulness and the benefit. These two things. As for the Anapana, to explain it in practice, with the heat of the exertion of energy, one sustains mindfulness and thus anchor one's noting mind on the object noted. That is the essence or meaning of Anapana. So every time you know the truth, you are able to do away with the impurities. You can remove these impurities. That is the immediate benefit. That is as regards the benefit of the practice. Now, the meaning of Anapana Satipatthana becomes obvious, and so too is the benefit of this Anapana Satipatthana, mindfulness of the objects of the body. Note every arising, and what is the aim of noting these bodily objects or objects of the body? To be free of kilesas. And noting every arising of. So the yogis are to note every arising in the body, so that they become free of kilesas. Such is understanding the Anapana Satipatthana from the practical standpoint.
Trên này trên này trên này trên này